In this interview, I meet up with Deirdre Morrison, who is the co-founder and program coordinator of Learn for Life Homeschool, a platform designed to help parents gain skills and confidence to help them deliver their kids' education. She has two teenage kids with whom she began her alternative education 10 years ago, and she firmly believes that all families should be supported in choosing the right style of education for the individual child. Let's welcome Deirdre. Thank you so much for meeting me today and doing this interview and a presentation for our audience.
It's an absolute pleasure, Kahila. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. So I want to start by asking you, you help parents. Tell us about what you do to help them.
Okay, so what I do is I work with some very experienced educators and experts in the field of child development and so on, and I bring their skills to parents in the way of a membership so that we can help parents who are setting out on a homeschooling or alternative education journey to develop the confidence and skills that they need to deliver the best learning opportunities for their child's unique abilities and talents.
Mm-hmm. And is this worldwide? Can anyone join?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
We have quite a few people from Canada. Obviously, Ireland and the UK are a big membership as well, and then we also have people from as far away as New Zealand and Australia. And we've worked with parents from the Czech Republic. We've worked with parents from Finland, South America, all over. Real mixing pot.
Mm-hmm. So you started this project because of after COVID, you saw a need for a membership site like this?
Actually, no, we started this well before COVID. We just didn't know that this was coming. This kind of, well, who did, I guess. But one of the reasons that we started was I could hear and see parents, especially in the UK and Ireland, who found that their child was very unhappy in school for one reason or another. It might have been academic, it might have been social, but basically there were so many parents who were coming to us with what looked like, they were in a position where their back was against the wall. They knew that the traditional or mainstream school environment was not right for their child, but they didn't know what to do next. They very much lacked the confidence to do what they knew in their hearts they needed to do. So that's when I teamed up with Gabriel Knight, who has extensive experience in creating curriculum based on the individual child. And we put together the core teaching skills framework that would give parents that starting place for them to go forward and build the homeschool that would be right for them and their child.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So is this web membership site open right now?
Yes. We had previously run the framework as a training course, but we realized after we'd done that a couple of times that parents needed a longer time to implement the framework and still have backup. So we did open our membership just recently, actually, and we're now going through the first block of the core teaching skills framework and also some of the work that we're going to look at here today as well.
Okay, awesome. So why is it important that we all have our own beliefs, right? So why is it that when we start, especially homeschooling or take on something like that, it's important for us to look at those beliefs before we dive into something like homeschooling?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Some of the beliefs that we have, we're very conscious of. We might have things going through our head like you must get a good education and so on. Some of the beliefs that we have, we're not so conscious of, like you can only get a good education in school. We don't really think about those ones. They just run as a sort of a little operating system that's in our heads because of all the things that we've always been told all our lives and all that we've known. So for someone who's been homeschooled, for instance, or who's been in another form of alternative education, the mainstream local school may not be their first thought. But for many of us who went through the mainstream education system ourselves, we're not entirely sure of what's available outside that. So looking at those things for a start and those beliefs about what education can be and how it can be delivered is very important. not only that, but our experience of how education made us feel and how it left us feeling, and how it set us up for life. All of those things also play into how we expect it to be for our children unless we start to look at those beliefs in detail.
Mm-hmm. And what do you notice with the parents you're working with? Like, what is their belief system about when it comes to homeschooling? And
So, yeah, well, obviously, homeschooling has been what I would describe as a minority sport for quite a long time. There have been growing numbers.
mm-hmm.
Even I know that there are maybe a couple of million homeschooling families in the US, but in Ireland and the UK, for instance, the numbers were much, much smaller. I think it was about 1,000 families in Ireland until recently. Those numbers were growing pretty steadily.
So I was just wondering, what are parents thinking right now? The ones that you have in your membership site and meeting them, right? What are they feeling? What are they fearing?
What are they fearing? That's a very good question. The one thing that parents fear the most is failing their kids. They absolutely do not want to do something that they feel is going to damage their children's future happiness or success. And I think that's a universal thing for parents, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But now, of course, in these times when you have so many restrictions and changes and unknowns in the school environment, or like the people who'd come to us previously, whether it was their individual child was not happy in that environment, then they are faced with the decision: what do I do? Do I leave my child in that place where I don't actually feel that they are living a normal, healthy, happy childhood, or do I take on something that I don't really feel like I have the skills or the confidence to do myself?
Mm-hmm. And where does that feeling come from? From our childhood, our belief system?
I think a lot of it comes from the fact that we were educated in the main in a system where we go in as children at the age of 5 or 6 or whatever, and there is a figure of authority there who directs what we're going to learn, who directs how we're going to learn it. So we very much we look up to our teachers, those figures who are in charge, basically. And I think when you're a kid and that person knows all those things, you go through to being an adult and thinking, oh, but I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of parents feel that they don't know how to teach, and that there must be some magic recipe or something, or a qualification or something that you must have to be able to do that. Instead of maybe looking at the situation as being one of being a learning partner with your child, where if you don't know something, well, actually, we can find it out. We can stop and we can think about this, and we can look at what is the problem and find a solution. And it may not be that the solution is in a book. It may be that we look somewhere else for it. So it's starting to think outside the box. But again, this brings us back to the beliefs, because if you don't see the box, you can't actually get past it. You can't think outside of it.
Mm-hmm. So your program, when they join your membership, it starts off with, I guess you work with the mindset, the belief system first. Is
Yes,
that
so
correct?
it's twofold. So we start with looking a little bit at the mindset and opening up the possibilities of what now becomes available to a homeschooling family when they are not bound by the formats and the kind of regularity of a traditional school environment. They now have basically the world is their oyster. So a lot of parents, and I think we saw this during lockdown and during COVID, was parents felt that they had to recreate school at home. And the advice, even coming from school principals and other educators and so on, was don't try to do that. So that's, I mean, a lot of the parents who are coming through to us, they're aware that that's, they don't have to do that anymore. But some people do still think that it must come out of a book. We must sit down with, workbooks and so on every day for a certain amount of time. And especially for younger children, that's really that's not essential. That's not necessary.
Yeah.
There are so many ways that we can expand and make the learning more fun and more enjoyable for everyone, and also make it a bonding experience for parent and child, that they are in this together, that this is family time as well as anything else.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us how parents can overcome these deep beliefs that we carry?
So absolutely, we we need to know that we've got them to start with. So what we like to do is to take a little trip down memory lane and throw ourselves back into our experience of school. And now I realize that this comes in a number of phases for some people. So they may have been very happy in primary school and not very happy in secondary school and so on. But you know, you'll be able to work through all of these phases. But excuse me, the first thing that I ask people to look at is the experience that they had socially. So in school, in terms of their peers, did they feel like they were accepted and supported by their friends in school, or maybe they were excluded in some way? Some of these memories are going to be great for some people, some of them are not going to be so great for other people, but we can dig down and we can understand a little bit more about what makes our brains what are we trying to stay safe from. And you know, these memories are generally going to give us clues to that. The next part of that sort of social experience is how they felt in terms of the staff and the teachers at school. So for some, again, you may have had some teachers who were wonderfully warm and some teachers who just put you in your place constantly and didn't make you feel like you were safe to be the child that you could be. Then the next part of it, I would look at the academic side of what was your school experience. So for some, we all have different learning styles and they're not always catered to equally in a classroom environment. And I know that as we grow and as we move through life, we learn to compensate for our maybe not so strong learning styles. So for instance, I don't like taking stuff in, just listening to it. I'm much better at reading, always have been, probably always will be. But as an adult, it's easier for me to deal with that than it would have been as a child. So understanding those things is actually something we go through as well. But for the academic environment, so you may have had a preferred learning style, which may have been that you're a really hands-on child. You like building things, or you liked running around and climbing. And again, those things aren't necessarily conducive to being in a school environment. Or you may have been a really quiet reader, writer. You may have had some subjects where you were really strong, like languages, for instance, or maths or science, or you may not have been strong in one or other of them as well. Or you may just have felt that you checked out early because you were not aligned with the very kind of one-size-fits-all type of system that the school by its nature has to be. So that would be the academic experience that you would have had in school. And some people are late developers as well. You know, they may kind of go through the early years in school not having succeeded so well, only to bloom late. And again, this is the thing, like Sir Ken Robinson says about, you know, our children don't develop based on their date of manufacture. They are all different and they will all come into their own at different times. I mean, my son, for instance, literally decided at 3:15 one Wednesday afternoon that he read now. And up until then, he had always sort of shied away from it and not been a reader at all. But that was the turning point for him because he saw something that he wanted to read. Wow. And then the final aspect of it is our family experience. And of course, again, that has such a huge impact on us. We may have been compared to our siblings. Why can't you be good at such and such like your sister? Or why can't you do that? Or you're better than, you know, so-and-so at something. These all give us little jigsaw pieces that create our identity and belief as we get older. There may have been expectations on us to perform to a level that we maybe struggled to achieve. Maybe we didn't get support. Maybe education was not considered to be something that was that important. So if we needed sort of additional help with homework or something, we may have been brushed off. any of these scenarios will start to form our overall view and picture, and little subconscious belief like, I'm not good at maths, for instance. And I know that that's one for a lot of people, but maybe it's not that we're not good at maths, but that we didn't have the right kind of teaching that allowed us to understand it properly. I'm probably singing your song here, am I?
Yes. I'm just going, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, it's the proper instruction is missing, right? And proper environment. Those are the two
Absolutely.
ingredients for the disaster we have with maths. You guys
Yeah.
say maths there,
Yes.
but we say math.
I know. We have more than one, you see.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I just, yeah, the same goes for every other subject too, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so, for instance, the belief that you have to sit and learn times tables, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's definitely a global thing. You get a little book and you learn off the stuff like a poem. And as a homeschooling parent, you can actually say, well, when am I ever, or when is my child ever going to need to recite these multiplication tables? As long as they know these individually and have a way of working this out, then that's fine. So for instance, we're actually doing, tomorrow, in fact, we're doing a demonstration of how you can just make it into a game.
Best way to teach anything, games.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the great thing about it is that you can actually start with a very simple version and you can make it more complex as you go.
Yes.
So this is one of the wonderful things. If you can, I think part of the problem as well is that we abstract knowledge too much. We take it out of any context. So again, like the times tables, they're not in context. So why would you remember them? But we would look at things like baking, for instance. That's a big one. That we like to do baking as an activity that we can talk about all kinds of things in baking. Maths for measuring and estimating, science for the chemistry aspect of it, and also nutrition. So, we can talk about how it's good for our bodies, bring in the biology. We can talk about where the things have come from, what the traditions of food have been, how people used this kind of cooking through the years. So there's so much that can be done from something that is simple and delicious.
And we do it every day.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're home, it's the easiest thing. We can do it with our kids, right?
Absolutely. And it's so much fun. I mean, who doesn't love baking as a kid? I mean, it's wonderful. So yes, that's kind of that. I'm just checking my notes here to make sure I haven't left anything out. But I think that is the guts of where we would start with looking at those expectations and trying to root them out a little bit. And you'll hear in your head maybe a little voice that sort of says something to you about if you start saying to yourself, well, maybe I should homeschool my kids. Maybe I should do this. And then it'll be that little voice that says, well, how are you going to do such and such? How are you going to teach them maths? You don't know enough about that to do it. But the thing is, especially if your kids are primary school level, this really isn't rocket science. And there are resources like yours, and there are so many resources. There's never been a better time to find resources online for parents. To actually start and help their kids move forward through their education. And I've been talking to a lot of parents as well, this belief that they won't be able to get them through secondary level, or will they be able to go to university? And I've spoken to so many parents whose kids are like, oh no, he's got a PhD now. So, and they've taken them right through primary and secondary up to university level. So I think it's more than possible. There's so much that can be done.
It's planning, right? And figuring out the laws and what are the requirement. And I think, and even if if you don't go as a right after high school year, if you don't go, but if you wait 1 year and you become an adult, then you can go as a mature student.
Absolutely. And we're hearing now that homeschool kids are actually being headhunted by universities because they know that they're gonna be a little bit ahead. And my sister also teaches in a university, and she says that she can tell the difference. She can
They're self-directed. They'll
Exactly.
be
Yeah,
self-directed.
yeah.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
far better equipped to learn because a lot of their learning they've created themselves. They know how to find things out, and they're used to being part of it. They're not vessels into which information is decanted. They are actually part of that experience and part of the direction.
Yeah. And when you're part of an institution like such as school, you're doing it as if somebody is forcing you to do it, right?
Yes,
Just following along a lineup even, right? When we line up our kids and they're just lining up because I'm told to line up, I'm told to sit down, I'm told to do math. When you do it when someone's told to do something,
yeah.
there's a
And
that's a
you're
belief or that's a system that you need to break through.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and that builds that fear because you're afraid not to do it. There
Yeah.
will be consequences if you don't want to
Oh,
do it.
yeah.
So absolutely, it's these things and our experiences are definitely worth thinking about if you are in a position where you think that for some reason you can't or that you're not equipped to. Um, the thing is that you as an adult have many skills, and if you've ever gone and got a job or bought a house or navigated your way through any of these life problems, then you have the skills to find out information, which is essentially what you're going to be doing as you work through an education with your children.
Yeah. I think the first part for many parents is going past like, how am I going to do this, right? There's a phase they have to figure out how am I going to, and then they go into that mind frame of, am I capable of doing this, right?
Mhm.
And that's a big part to overcome the capacity, my capacity. And that's where that belief system kind of drops in, I think,
Absolutely.
from the past.
And then, what I love, and I have so many good memories of seeing this, is that parents do come to us in that stage where they've made the decision. So they've got past that I don't know if I can. They've taken the step and decided that they're going to go for it. And now they are in that research phase where they're going, okay, well, what can I bring to bear on this? What can I use to create this education for my children, to create this education with my children?
Mm, yeah. Did you have a slide that you wanted to show us, like how
Yes,
parents can overcome? There's
yes,
a
I
way
do.
that you teach it, right? To overcome
Yeah.
the.
So this is one of the exercises that we go through in the first week of our membership. Let me see if I can share a screen here for 1 second. And this, I'm just going to put up this one slide because what I'll do is I will give you the PDF for this
Okay,
and
awesome.
make it available to people however that works for you. So can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, basically this is the skills and confidence matrix. So obviously at the top there you have when people have got a good level of confidence.
Mm,
Down at the bottom of the page where they've got low confidence. On the left we've got where they've got poor skills or perceived poor skills. And on the right where they've got good skills. So obviously you can be any combination of this. If you want to grade yourself on this sheet, obviously like that on the far left, you would think I have absolutely no teaching skills whatsoever. On the right, it's like absolutely, I'm 100%. My skills are fine. I'm probably a teacher. So somewhere in between is where most people will land. And again, for the confidence, a lot of people that I've spoken to would be quite low on that to start with. But the idea is that you want to go from maybe the bottom left quadrant of this graph, you want to find ways that where you can move up to the top right quadrant.
mm-hmm.
And by analyzing where you feel like you're deficient is where you can actually then start to put some actions in place to help improve that.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, if you have got what you would see as poor skills and low confidence, that bottom left quadrant,
Mm-hmm.
what we would encourage parents to ask themselves is, why do you think you have poor skills? On what basis are you judging this?
Mm-hmm.
If you've never, if you've ever taught your child anything, then you probably have more skills than you are thinking about. And I'm not talking about academically. If you've taught your child to zip up their coat or
Yeah.
to put on their socks or to feed themselves, you have been teaching them all along. You are their first and best teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if, maybe you have skills and you haven't audited for them, you don't know what they are, you haven't actually sat down to think about or to list all the things that you've taught your child. Now, the other question I would ask people to consider here is, are your skills your only area of concern? Is that all you're worried about?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, you can always enhance your skills. You can develop them. You can move on with things like that. And there may be other concerns there that would affect your confidence. And a lot of that can come from external sources as well. If you don't feel like you have the support of maybe family or partner, or even your peer circle, that can knock our confidence too.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing, I guess, is where we have poor skills and high confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, same question: why would you perceive your skills to be poor? What steps can you take to improve them? And how can you maintain the confidence and enthusiasm? Because you might go into this feeling like, yes, absolutely, I can do this, and then find that there are some things that you had expected to work one way, which maybe don't work out for you. So how can you bring those skills along and bring them to match the confidence, rather than letting the confidence fall down to meet what you perceive as the skills?
Yeah, I think that they're like, it's us saying that I'm not a teacher, right? But you don't need a teaching degree to teach your child.
Absolutely, yes. I've heard that described as the myth of the teacher qualification.
Yeah.
That's a story for another day. So the next quadrant then to look at is the good skills and low confidence. So for instance, I was talking to a teaching assistant, a classroom teaching assistant this week, and we went through one of my sessions where I'd spoken to her about pretty much this sort of stuff. And I think her realization that she was probably holding back and worrying about things that she didn't need to worry about, because she's been in an environment where she has been effectively teaching professionally. So in a way, she is well placed to take this on, but still
Yes.
she hesitated. And some of that can be about how it's going to be being with your child all day, every day. Or, a lot of people, and many parents don't even want to talk about this, is, I don't know if I'll have the patience to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a concern that comes up if, when you've been talking to people for a while and they're like, I just don't know if I would have the patience.
Yeah.
So our confidence may not be so much to do with the skills, but more our personality and mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And again, these things can be helped by being aware of them, and also making sure that we have built in the elements of self-care that are required.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people, they don't, they're trying to keep on top of all the household stuff, all the education stuff, all these other things, and it wears them out very quickly. And I mean, you'll probably be quite aware of the levels of burnout for educators anyway. So this is one of the things that we're really big on in the membership, is that you've got to make sure that you've got your self-care in place, and making sure that you're pretty tough on yourself about making sure that you keep it going, because that's where those little issues can happen. And if you as the educator are burned out, then you're not going to be doing a good job for your kids either. And then if we've got good skills and good confidence, that's wonderful. That is absolutely great. And you will be in a position where you will be able to deliver and develop on those, because these skills, there are so many basics in there, but you will be evolving with your child as well, and making sure that you are kind of thinking ahead, so that you know what they're going to be facing in the next sort of stage of their development, or the next stage of their education. And that's where you will put most of your focus in terms of going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a very simple starting point for people. Again, as I said, like if you land somewhere in that bottom left quadrant, to just try and think of those things there's a sheet of prompts, to try and think, what can I do to bring myself up to one of those other areas.
Hmm. I think this is this. Do you think these feelings that we have, these are from what we experienced, as you said earlier, right? From our own childhood and what we went through.
Quite a lot of it, and also what we get from our kind of our circle now as well.
Mm.
You know, a lot of parents that I'm talking to don't feel like they have support socially. Maybe even in the family, there might be one side of the family, for instance, might be thinking, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, whatever you think is best for the children. And the other side of the family might have a very traditional view of what education must be and will be resisting. And that's one of the other things that we have looked at, is trying to overcome that resistance and trying to understand where it's coming from, because it can cause so much heartache. You know, it can feel, if you are a parent who is deciding to take this on, who is deciding to kind of put your main focus on creating an education for your children, and you have maybe in-laws or even your own parents or your own siblings or whatever who's saying, well, you know, how are you going to do this? How can you know? It feels like a personal attack.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like they have no confidence in you, that they are doubting you before giving you a chance. And that can really hurt your confidence. That can very much knock you down from, you know, feeling like, yeah, well, maybe I could do this, to, oh, maybe I, you know, you can almost feel the person shrinking away when these things are being said to them. So we look at trying to understand what their kind of belief system is as well, and offering evidence to show that, well, it's not, you know, this is what happens when kids are home educated. They are very erudite, they are very able, capable, they can go on and do what they want to do. But in a lot of instances, the concern that is coming across, the resistance that potential homeschoolers are meeting, is because people don't actually have any experience of this, and they feel like there is a risk being taken with the children's future.
Yeah.
So just even, you know, if you can do some research and come up with some case studies, there are so many homeschool pages and forums and so on that will give you information about what children are now doing who have been homeschooled. There are also statistics. Statistics they're my favorite, because that's not just hearsay. That's
Yeah.
just, you know, that
Proof.
is numbers that you can present, and that tends to work better for a more traditional view anyway. And there are lots and lots of those available too, especially from the US, because they have such big numbers.
Yeah.
So it's easy to pick up statistics from various sources there as well.
That's right. That's right. And I think parents have to, or whoever chooses, have to know the why they wanted to do this in the first place. You have to every day remember that. It's kind of have to become your one of your phrases or a couple of sentences you say to yourself every day. This
Absolutely.
is why I'm doing this, right?
Yes, a mantra. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And, you know, there will be days when I feel very strongly for the parents who are great planners, who are very organized and who have a time slot for everything and everything in its time slot, because my experience of children is that they don't actually really go with that all the time. And I think for a lot of people, the real struggle will be to actually take it easy on themselves and their kids,
Yeah.
and to not feel like they're racing against something. I've seen this as well, that, you know, parents have made the decision to take their child out of school for whatever reason, and it's like they're still running that race when there is no need to do so.
Hmm. How do you think a parent can overcome that? Because we're used to that, right? We're like
That's
we.
part of our conditioning. These are the beliefs that we must keep up, that our children must do something at a certain age. So trying to overcome this will actually, I mean, even, you know, I've seen experienced home or unschoolers who obviously just, you know, don't look at any kind of traditional methods of education. They really go for it in letting the child lead the learning process. And even they have days when they go, what have I done?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is a case of just remaining calm and understanding that there will be good days and bad days, and also the process of deschooling is one that we talk about as well. For the children, that helps if they've had a traumatic experience in school.
Mm-hmm.
There are no school activities for maybe 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
after school is after they're withdrawn from school. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's equally important for the parents,
Yep.
because in that time they start to see that children will kind of want to learn on their own anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they will want to learn will bring things up for the parents. So, for instance, if they want to spend a lot of time Minecrafting, the parent may think that that's not education, that they're not learning. But I can certainly vouch for the amount that my son learned through Minecraft. It can be a great learning tool.
Yep.
And I know of another parent whose son went on to write a book about the science of Minecraft.
Nice.
So, yeah, a lot of the things that you see them doing may not kind of at first glance look like they're learning, but if you dig down into it, if you get into it with them, I think that's one of the other things I would advise parents to do, is to become involved in what it is that their kids are doing in the deschooling period, so that they're understanding
Yeah.
what's actually happening. Ask questions, try and be part of it, because that's really where the learning partnership happens.
Yeah, that's good you mentioned that about the deschooling, because that's the time you can really study, even get to know your child.
Absolutely.
What they're free, because they're free, they will show you what their interests are. And then when you're ready to homeschool or
Mm-hmm.
unschool or whichever directions you go in, you'll exactly know what to put into place, right?
Yeah.
It's a good period
Um,
of time.
That's another, there's another resource that I'll see if I can get a link for that for you as well. We have an ebook, it's called Observing the Child.
Oh, yes.
And it is about looking at the sort of things they do. And it goes, we go into a lot of detail in that as well, because you can learn so much from the child, even by the stages that they do certain things at.
Yeah.
Some, for instance, you might have to cast your mind back to when your child was very small, if they're a little bit more grown up now. But did they crawl or did they bum shuffle, as we call it here? Were they early talkers? Were they what kind of food do they like? Do they like a nap during the day? All of these things that we can bring to bear as a part of the overall understanding of the whole child.
Mm-hmm. Very important. So, is there anything else you want to add to this slide for our viewers, like with this skills and confidence? I think it's very important that take the time to become aware, is what you said, right? It's the awareness is the first step.
The awareness is the first step, yes. So the three areas for journaling exercises that we talked about at the start are to look back on your experience of school with your peers and the teaching staff, and how they made you feel, whether that was a good experience or a bad experience for you. Because one of the other questions that comes up a lot is every homeschooler ever, I think, gets this question: what about socialization?
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we've discussed at length in our group as well, because there's this myth that socialization for children can only happen in a school environment, which is because they'll be with lots of other children.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, that is not the whole of socialization. And certainly for children up to the age of about 7, the family unit is so overridingly important. And what they're getting there in terms of socialization and learning how to behave and so on is probably more important than what they would get in a classroom.
Yeah.
The second of the 3 blocks of experiences to look at was your own academic experience and how that makes you feel about your capabilities now in terms of taking on a home education role.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one was about family and how their expectations on you have maybe a knock-on expectation or a knock-on impact on your expectations of your child.
Yeah.
Do you think that your child needs to get good grades in order to be a successful and happy person? Do you
Mm.
think that your child is maybe can only, for instance, be capable to the level that you were?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think parents tend to think that their children have more potential than them anyway. But just for the sake of argument, to explore all the options in that and what they might mean for us going forward.
And then think about all of that, and then do something. This chart here that you've presented to us, right?
Yes,
Go
so
through this and see where you are.
absolutely. And the chart, it comes with a few kind of just little notes on the subsequent pages. So
Okay,
there will be
perfect.
points for that to help remember where you were supposed to be, what you were supposed to be looking at. And of course,
Okay.
there will be other things as well that will pop into people's heads as they do these exercises, and definitely listen to those voices.
Yeah. And do you recommend them going back to it, leaving it and going back? Because sometimes these are, as you said, it's going down your memory lane. They're not just going to come sometimes, right?
That's true, absolutely. And reflective inquiry is something that, again, we talk about a lot. So you might put this idea in into your mind, and you might just make some notes or whatever. But Gabriel is a great one. She always says, sleep on it.
Yeah.
Just sleep on it and see what happens overnight, because your brain will start sorting through all these things. And you'll be amazed at what comes up in the space of a few days. You might remember things that you had long since forgotten,
Yeah.
and start to understand something that maybe has always put you on your guard about doing something, but the actual source of what has put you in that position has been masked for many years.
Yeah. So, what's the time frame should be for this? When within your program, you guys do this over weeks?
So we deliver the core teaching skills part of it over the course of about 4 months.
Okay.
These parts, these sort of coaching elements, they run right through the program, or for as long as people are in the membership.
Mm.
There are other aspects of it too, such as the parenting blocks, for instance. Like we have how would you describe Kerry? Kerry is a family communications expert, and she's also a past homeschooler herself. She works with families in areas where they need to improve communication and so on. So she's done a few blocks for us on overcoming resistance to learning, which is something that a lot of parents report in certainly the early days, when they're maybe their child has kind of checked out and doesn't understand what the point is anymore. So that's one of the things that we look at. And building confidence if confidence has been knocked. So that's another one of those little mini courses. And we actually do creativity was something that people come up with a lot as one of the things that they would like their homeschooling to be. So we have woven in a number of again, little mini courses and master classes where people can learn some skills that actually help their child to learn something else. So, for instance, we have got making salt dough architecture. We've got wet molding leather. We've got bookbinding. All these various things as well. So it's quite a comprehensive little place to be.
Nice, nice. Thank you for sharing that. So, can we exit this one? Is that okay? I
Yes.
want to bring you back? So, tell me, what is your advice for parents starting homeschooling?
Enjoy and relax and step off the merry-go-round, and don't feel like you are still racing against the school clock. The school clock works very differently, and your time at home doesn't need to be structured the same way, and nor do you need to spend the same amount of time doing schoolwork, because any teacher will tell you that about 2 hours a day for a child up to the age of 10 is loads. And because you're going to be doing so many other things, learning about chores and learning about or gardening or any of these other activities that you will naturally probably do anyway, are just full of learning and learning opportunities. And it's about seeing the opportunities and running with them.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is like training yourself to make those everyday things that we do with our kids into an opportunity of learning, if we could
Absolutely.
get into that mind frame. So I was just saying that how parents can incorporate learning into everything they do with their kids, right? But I don't think we have that in our frame. We think like we're just gardening,
Yes,
but just reframing that and say in that in a activity, what learning could I teach them right now? And it could
absolutely.
be just one skill. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch of stuff, right?
Yeah, or even just interesting things like, okay, so we're in the garden. What are the earthworms doing?
Yeah,
Um, how long do the earthworms live? Who knows? Let's look it up.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
many things to learn all the time.
yeah.
Everything is about learning.
Yeah, I remember even my like one time my grandpa was showing me how to like shovel the dirt, and I accidentally cut one of the earthworm, and then I was like, oh no, right? But they grow, right? They
Yeah,
grow back. They don't die. He's like, no, he's not going to be dead. He'll
yeah,
just get the body back again, and don't worry about it. But that's because I cut one, and he showed. But that's how you learn, though. Even though it was a mistake, you take that opportunity to teach someone. That's how the our ancestors taught other people. That's how
yeah.
we learned,
Oh, yes, so much so.
right?
Yeah, and so many kids are entirely fascinated by bugs and things anyway. But as adults, we're like, oh no, that's dirty. Leave that alone.
Yeah,
And I think we have to kind of get back to that sense of wonder about the things that are around us and how fascinating beetles are. And where do beetles live and what do they eat? And all those questions that children are always asking, that is their natural instinct to learn. And I think the best thing that we can do as parents is try and, especially in a homeschooling situation, is slow down to that level and
level.
take the time to explore that with them, because that's where the love of learning is. And that's the one thing that we don't want to snuff out.
Yeah, yeah. Slowing down is the hard part because we
It is.
been racing for grades and the next level, pushing our kids to the next level, next level, next level. But it's just made by the system, right?
Yeah.
It's just a system.
Yeah,
So
and they
just
will get there. They will get there.
yeah, yeah. I've heard so many successful stories with homeschooling students going on to university or, becoming engineers. It doesn't matter. They'll become what they want to become if you provide that environment for them, right? It
Absolutely.
doesn't matter. It's at home or at school. But if it's working for at school, then that's great for some families, right? If some families want to keep their kids at school, it's fine.
Totally. I mean, this is the other thing that we're always saying is it's about finding the right thing for your family and your child.
Yeah.
Um, and whether that is to go down the home education or alternative education route, or whether it is mainstream education, there are some kids who absolutely love it. They are happy as, and to take them out of it would not help them. It wouldn't actually, it wouldn't give them that sense of security or any of the other things that creating a homeschool would do. So it is about that whole choice, and the child obviously has to be at the center of that decision.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for all your input and ideas. And I hope you'll give us the link to your website and I'll put it up, and our viewers can look at it, and also about your membership site and the download that you created for them.
Thank you so much, Kahila. It's been an absolute pleasure as always to talk to you, and I hope we'll do it again.
Thank you very much.